Okay, so this is an update on how New York City is doing under its new communist Islamist mayor, Zohran Mamdani. And I want to show you this heartbreaking moment that this mother in Brooklyn, New York, discovers that her baby, her 7-month-old daughter in this stroller, has been shot in the head by a stray bullet. This just happened. Now, at first, everybody just thought that the booms, the blasts that they heard were fireworks. And the people here, you see that they're laughing, they think it's no big deal. Until this mom goes over to the stroller and looks at her child. And she discovers her 7-month-old baby daughter, Kaori, has been shot in the head and killed by this stray bullet.
Please, my little baby angel.
7-month-old Kaori Patterson Moore was just starting to learn how to walk, her grandmother says, before her young life was cut short.
And here the two killers on a moped, the driver and a shooter, they're driving away. And 2 blocks away, they have this head-on collision with this incoming car. Looks like the shooter has a broken leg here. These are very low IQ people. Then they get back up on the moped and they drive off. The 2 were later arrested. The shooter's name is Amuri Green, age 21. He's also a suspect in a spree of robberies. The target of this hit, it turns out, was the baby's dad, Jamari Patterson. The bullets missed him, and one hit his baby daughter instead, hit her in the head. This same bullet grazed the back of his 2-year-old son, the brother of the daughter that was killed. And the shooting seems to be gang-related, appears to have stemmed from a social media beef and a rivalry between 2 gang-infested public housing projects. Not clear whether the baby's father was connected to a gang. I assume he was. And here's Mamdani.
And today is a devastating reminder of just how much more work there is to be done to combat gun violence across this city.
He says the problem is gun violence. He blames it on the gun. No, the problem is the career criminals that you and Democrat mayors across the country just allow to freely run the streets and prey on the public. Also, Democrat district attorneys and judges. These career violent criminals, they're released onto the streets with no cash bail. Their violent felonies and robberies are pled down to misdemeanors, so don't count as violent felonies in the crime statistics. This is how these Democrat municipalities create false violent crime statistics.
I heard it was gang-related. They should not be driving mopeds and just shooting people.
Do you think the elected officials like Mayor Mamdani are doing a good job?
No, not really.
He said he was going to combat gun violence, and a lot of his critics were saying, well, you should combat gang violence.
Exactly, gang violence.
Video shows a man pulls out a gun after what appears to be an argument and fires multiple times at close range, and then he just calmly walks away.
I knew the one that got killed. I was just over here Saturday. I'm always over here.
And this happened on Easter Sunday, just before 6 in the evening in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn, in front of a restaurant on Fulton Street. A 30-year-old here died of multiple gunshot wounds, and another 50-year-old remains in critical condition at the hospital. Just another day in Mamdani's New York City.
You feel safe in New York?
No, I don't.
I don't. The guy came and grabbed my phone from behind and ran.
So he stole your phone?
He stole my phone.
I almost got pushed inside the tracks. When the train was coming, I felt like I slightly pushed and I almost fell forward. That's the reason why I don't even want to be in New York.
A man with 131 prior arrests was recently charged for lighting a homeless man on fire.
131 priors?
There's 100 and something charges. It's almost like, when is it going to stop?
And just this week, the repeat offender who shot and killed NYPD detective Jonathan Diller during a 2024 traffic stop was found not guilty of murder.
That is crazy, though. Wow.
Mayor Mamdani then just got dragged online for this incredibly lame statement that he posted about the murder of this 7-month-old girl. Here's what he said, or what his press office wrote. Quote, "A 7-month-old baby was shot and killed today in Brooklyn, an unthinkable loss. I'm grateful for the hospital staff who did everything they could and the NYPD for their ongoing work to find those responsible for this heinous murder. We cannot accept this violence as normal. Too many families have suffered in pain." End quote. And this post has 1.3 million views. Almost all the comments are negative. I would say 90% negative. For example, this ex-user named Leonard Bayard says this, quote, "But isn't violence just an artificial construct?" He's referring to statements like this by Mamdani where he says that the real violence is putting these criminals in prison.
So violence is an artificial construction. And we have to be very clear that what is happening here with these district attorneys, that is violence. That is violence of the highest degree.
That's what Mamdani thinks. And here's another response to Mamdani's post by this ex-user.
Mr. Mayor, where the hell was this outrage when 83-year-old Air Force veteran Richard Williams, a grandpa, a hero, who served this country, got shoved onto the subway tracks by a 4-time deported illegal immigrant with a criminal record that should have kept him out of this country forever? Richard Williams died from that random, vicious attack weeks ago. You had time. You had the platform. You gave him nothing, not a tweet, not a press conference, not a single damn word.
And this poster, this ex-user, is talking about this 83-year-old Air Force veteran who died after being pushed onto the subway tracks by this illegal migrant who had been deported 4 times, by the way, and had 15 prior arrests for violent crimes. Even though he'd been deported 4 times, Biden just let him back into the country. And then Mamdani and the Democrats protect this guy from being caught by ICE in New York City, which is a sanctuary city. And actually, this illegal migrant pushed 2 people off the subway platform and onto the tracks that day. But one of them survived. One managed to get back up on the platform before the train arrived. Mamdani, of course, was silent about all this.
He was a grandpa, he was a dad, he was just trying to take a quick subway ride in New York City, but he was shoved onto the tracks, according to police. And this is the man police say is responsible, 34-year-old Byron Hernandez. Earlier this month, police say he was at a subway stop on New York City's Upper East Side, so in a pretty normal area of town, not far from Midtown. He shoved 2 men onto the tracks. One man was able to get up and recover, but Richard Williams is 83. He falls down, he hits his head, he can't get up. He's rushed to the local hospital, and he later died. DHS says Hernandez has a long rap sheet. I'm talking a lot of charges, 15 prior charges. We're talking assault, domestic violence, and drug and weapons charges for this man. The feds say he's been deported 4 times, but he just came right back into the country. DHS calling on New York City to keep him behind bars. They say Byron Posada Hernandez is a serial criminal, a 4-time deported illegal alien from Honduras who should have never been able to walk our streets and harm innocent Americans. So here's the deal. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, he's not yet commented on this case. You can see it here. He was just taking questions at a local press conference about street crime. He's taken a hard stance, though, on anti-ICE. He doesn't want them in the city, and he has strong sanctuary protections that he wants, Bill.
To Mamdani's twisted way of thinking, the capitalist system is the real problem in America, and police are the problem in America. And to Mamdani's way of thinking, it was just a white dude who got murdered, a white Air Force veteran. So I guess a form of reparations. That's how these lunatics think. And because police are the enemy in the mind of Mamdani, here we have Mamdani calling for a $1 billion cut to the New York City Police Department budget because, according to him, quote, policing is something that does not create safety, end quote.
The demand of $1 billion is not because that is the amount of money that will solve everything. It comes out of an understanding that policing is something that does not create safety. And what we need to do is reinvest into things that are proven indicators and creators of safety. And the city council budget did not do that. And it's just mind-blowing. They cut 1 out of 4 cadet classes next year. The headcount of the police department will go up next year. How we can call this a serious cut to the police is beyond me.
And Mamdani has said over and over again how much he despises the police and wants to defund the police. Here's what he says in this ex-post, quote, we don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the NYPD, New York City Police Department. No fake cuts, defund the police, end quote. That's Mamdani. I can go on all day with Mamdani's many calls to defund the police. And here he very bizarrely tells us, quote, queer liberation means defunding the police. For some reason, the LGBTQ agenda is linked to defunding the police in the minds of these people. And here he tells us, quote, we need a socialist city council to defund the police. So defunding the police is also linked to socialism. he thinks. So socialism, defunding the police, and the LGBTQ agenda apparently all go together. It certainly does seem that way. And so does the cause of the Palestinians and Hamas. That's why you see Free Palestine flags alongside LGBTQ flags at these protests. And here's a weird post. His hatred of the police is so extreme that he mocks a description of a weeping police officer. This poster on X named Mikey writes, quote, "I just saw a cop crying in his car, LMAOOO, laughing my ass off." That's what that means. And then Mamdani responds, quote, "Nature is healing," end quote. "Nature is healing," says Mamdani, in response to the post about a weeping police officer. How sick and twisted is that? Mamdani has no idea why this cop might be crying. Might be a family member who died, a friend who died, a fellow police officer. But he thinks it's great that this police officer is weeping for some unknown reason. In the view of Mamdani, the police are not even human, not even worth any kind of sympathy. Something really wrong with this guy. Something really wrong with the Democrat Party. Because most of them subscribe to this. And as a result of all this mayor's attitude toward the police, New York City police officers are retiring in droves. Retiring en masse. And it's almost impossible to recruit new police officers with this insanely anti-cop mayor. Government's primary responsibility is to keep the people safe, to keep the citizens safe. And those police who do remain on the job, they're not going to lift a finger to stop crime, lest an armed suspect ends up dead and the cop becomes a target of an anti-cop witch hunt by Mamdani and his woke district attorney, Alvin Bragg. And even if the violent criminal is arrested, the violent criminal knows that he's going to be out on the street in no time with no cash bail. He's going to be let off by District Attorney Alvin Bragg and Democrat judges who dominate New York City. And so criminals predictably are now running wild in New York City, knowing that there are going to be no consequences for their crimes under this pro-criminal mayor who probably likes the crimes, thinks these crimes are a form of reparations against the power structure, against capitalism. Here we have a 17-year-old kid named Josu Argudo who was slashed in the neck in broad daylight.
Minutes later, Argudo would sit down on the front wall of a house and slump over. He died at the hospital.
I've lived here since 1989. Seen lots of things happen on this block. So anything like this has never happened before.
And here, a McDonald's employee in New York City records another day in Mamdani's New York City. This very large man keeps swinging a chair into the restaurant window until he's able to shatter it. No police anywhere in sight. He seems to have no concerns whatsoever that he's going to be stopped by anyone. Here we have a pack of wild teenagers on a rampage in a Bronx supermarket, accosting customers, punching the security guard, and even ripping the hair out of a female employee's head when she tried to stop them. Here's what your dining experience might be like in New York City these days. Here's another lovely dining experience. These girls are lucky that they escaped alive. Here's what might happen to you if you ride a New York subway. Here's a male beating up a female on the subway. Very different from what it's like to ride public transport in Japan. A 4-year-old in Japan can ride on the public transportation system by herself and no concerns for her safety.
Why do parents in Japan let their kids walk to school alone? Aren't they afraid of kidnapping, traffic, or getting lost? The truth is, Japan has multiple layers of protection. First, the law. Child trafficking brings the harshest penalties. Both buyer and seller can face life in prison.
And when Japan says life in prison, they mean life in prison.
There's even a children's bank. From a young age, kids open accounts, learn finance, safety, and how to seek help. In Japan, law plus community plus culture work together, so kids can walk freely and grow with independence.
In Japan, the kids are like little adults because they're raised to be that way. And this used to be the case here in America. The concept of teenager is really a modern invention, a contrivance. For most of human history, a boy by age 13 was engaged in work either on the family farm or as an apprentice, learning a trade, learning a skill. George Washington was a professional surveyor by the age of 16. Alexander Hamilton was running a trading company at the age of 14. The idea that an 18-year-old or a 24-year-old or a 30-year-old is still trying to figure things out would have been unthinkable before the modern age. And we would not see nearly the level of mental illness and psychological disorders that we see today if young people were actually engaged in productive work. I don't remember seeing a lot of mental illness when I was growing up. Mental illness was really not much of a thing in the 1970s. Not many overweight people back then either. But this chaos that we're seeing in New York City is really pretty much the same story in every Democrat-run city. Target is shutting down stores in San Francisco, Portland, New York City, and other Democrat-run cities amid the rampant theft and violence.
And just take a look at these people. They're at the baby formula section, and they're just swiping stuff off the shelves, say cops. Baby formula, cosmetics, underwear. There's really not a rush. They're shopping without paying, say police.
Target announced today that it's closing 9 stores in major cities next month because of theft and organized retail crime.
In fact, 28% of retailers nationwide are closing locations, closing their stores due to all the crime, all the shoplifting. Here we have an organized smash and grab at a jewelry store by a group of criminals. They have very little concern that they will be caught. And if they are caught, not much is going to happen. The police have their hands tied by these woke mayors, or there's no police at all. When are the voters going to wake up?
And I want to make clear that I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not. This is a movement, I'm telling you.
Democrats have become the pro-crime party. And the criminals and street thugs have become the equivalent of Hitler's brown shirts for the Democrats. Democrats view crime and shoplifting as a form of reparations. It's their way of taking a sledgehammer to capitalism and private property. Their goal is to collapse the economic system and replace it with socialism or communism or worse.
They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not.
You don't have to live this way. All of this is very preventable. Mamdani also talks constantly about ending prisons. Here he tells us that prisons don't make us safer.
The way that prisons are set up in our society, I would argue that they do not work. They do not make us safer. The instinct is to just take that person, the source of that harm, the source of that issue, and then just throw them away. Put them in a cage and throw away the key. That doesn't address the reason why that harm was created in the first place. A lot of times, people who create trauma for others are those who themselves went through trauma earlier in their own lives. Right. And I bring all of this up to say that, again, like when we talk about policing, I don't think the system actually makes us safer. I think what it does is it just removes problems out of view.
Oh, really? Well, explain that to the families of the 50 people who were shot on any given weekend in Chicago.
Chicago police say Friday night 2 shootings took place downtown that left 7 other teenagers injured. The first one just outside our ABC 7 State Street studios, which sent a large crowd running in all directions. About an hour later and blocks away at Dearborn and Monroe, gunfire erupted, killing 14-year-old Armani and injuring an 18-year-old man.
It was unfair to him. Super infectious energy.
The way that prisons are set up in our society, I would argue that they do not work. They do not make us safer. Again, like when we talk about policing, I don't think the system actually makes us safer. I think what it does is it just removes problems out of view.
Tell that to Irina Zarutska. Tell that to Irina's mom, this beautiful 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee who was murdered by this monster sitting behind her, a career criminal named DeCarlos Brown Jr. Here he was sitting behind her before he took out his pocket knife and stabbed her in the neck. She bled out and died. Tell Irina's mom that prisons don't make us safer. This guy had a lengthy arrest record for violent crimes, but he was free on the street to kill Irina Zarutska, who had come to America to be safe from the Ukraine war. Seems to be safer to be in Ukraine during the war than it does to be in a Democrat-run city. And Mamdani always tells us that mental health counseling, more mental health counseling, is the answer to violent crime.
The way that prisons are set up in our society, I would argue that they do not work. They do not make us safer. The instinct is to just take that person, the source of that harm, the source of that issue, and then just throw them away. Put them in a cage and throw away the key. that doesn't address the reason why that harm was created in the first place. A lot of times, people who create trauma for others are those who themselves went through trauma earlier in their own lives.
Just talk it through with these criminal gangs and drug cartels. He says putting these career criminals in prison just removes problems out of view. You see, the problem is not the criminal, it's the capitalist system, in the view of Mamdani and of most Democrats today. No, actually, putting these violent criminals in prison does remove them from our community so that the kids can play outside without fear of getting shot or slashed in the neck. It's pretty much the same people, maybe a few hundred people in all of New York City that are committing most of the crimes. They know exactly who these people are. Get them off the street permanently.
A man with 131 prior arrests was recently charged for lighting a homeless man on fire.
131 priors?
There's 100 and something charges. It's almost like, when is it going to stop?
That is crazy, though. Wow.
And the sad fact is, we knew all this about Mamdani. We knew exactly what he was going to do before he was elected mayor. But the voters of New York elected him anyway. It wasn't any secret what he was going to do. New York City, under Mamdani, is a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. Here we have illegal migrants housed in New York City at taxpayer expense, attacking the police as they were trying to make an arrest of a violent suspect, make an arrest of another illegal immigrant. Migrants who arrived illegally under Joe Biden and who continue to be protected by Mamdani have carried out hundreds of acts of robbery and violence in New York City since Mamdani took over the mayor's office. Elections have consequences. And on the one hand, you could say, well, maybe the people of New York City deserve it because they voted him in, right? But that 7-month-old girl, well, she didn't deserve it, right? That 83-year-old Air Force veteran who was pushed onto the subway tracks and died, he didn't deserve it. Not everybody voted for Mamdani, but the people who did not vote for Mamdani still get the consequences of his leadership. New York City is probably now worse than most third world countries in terms of quality of life, unless you're one of the super rich and can afford to live in a penthouse with security. But this is the reality that most New Yorkers are living in.
So many unanswered questions about the case after 2 severed body parts were found. They found a severed leg coming down a conveyor belt at this plant. Now, this was after midnight today, after cops tell us that yet another leg was discovered in the same place as the first one.
We were repeatedly offered quote-unquote massages by women hanging out in groups inside of storefronts advertised as spas. Neighbors say they see it happening 24/7, 365.
This year, I've seen it a lot. It's everywhere.
More this year than other years?
More than every other years, I know.
Of the merchants that are selling all these stolen goods, actually, like everybody on the street now around me is part of the crew that is selling these stolen goods. They kind of work in concert. They have lookouts on the corners which alert them when the police are coming or when there's any kind of trouble. They have their items laid out on big like beach towels that they could just kind of wrap it up, bundle it up, throw it over their shoulders and hightail it out of there. And there's a guy right now taking a young prostitute into a building. He just solicited a prostitute and then took her with him right here in front of me right now as I'm talking to you. And my photographer has been taking pictures of them all day. They don't care. They're not like worried or, trying to hide or trying not to be conspicuous. They don't give a hang. They're not scared at all.
And this observer here says that almost all these vendors selling stolen goods on the street and all these prostitutes that you see on the streets here, all this human trafficking involves illegal migrants who poured into America under President Joe Biden. Biden just let 12 million migrants pour in because Democrats see these people, these illegal migrants, as future Democrat voters. Maybe immediate Democrat voters. That's why Democrats are all for open borders. And no ID required to vote, no proof of U.S. citizenship. They're fighting tooth and nail to block these simple safeguards to protect the integrity of our elections because they want these people voting.
And the number of robberies in the stores around here just going off the chart.
Here's how this guy protects himself when he ventures onto a New York City subway today. He carries a can of beans wrapped in a sock. My daughter lives in Manhattan. When she takes the subway to work, she stands with her back to the wall and waits for the train to arrive before stepping forward into the train. That's how she protects herself from being pushed onto the train tracks by some lunatic. And of course, Zohran Mamdani has made it clear throughout his public life how much he hates America. Mamdani just became a U.S. citizen in 2018, 8 years ago. He was born in Uganda. His parents are originally from India, but Zohran's father was a professor in Uganda at the time Zohran was born. And Mamdani is an Islamist who openly supports terrorism, doesn't hide his support for terrorism. And he had never held a real job before he was elected mayor of New York City, other than being elected to the Assembly of New York State in 2020. That was just 2 years after he became a U.S. citizen. Before that, he tried to make it as a rapper under the stage name of Mr. Cardamom. What kind of a rapper name is that? And in one of his songs, he said that America deserved the 9/11 attack. He recorded this song in 2017. Let's take a listen. Here are the lovely words to that song. Quote, "No band, no wall, build it up. We'll make it fall. Me, LMAO, laughing my ass off. Zohran, my love to the Holy Land 5. You better look 'em up. On 9/11, they hit us on our own soil, but we've been hitting them for years, deserving every blow from the tears." End quote. What a nice song. And the Holy Land 5 he refers to in this video refers to 5 Islamic radicals in America who were convicted of running a fake charity called the Holy Land Foundation that was raising and sending money to Hamas, a terrorist organization in Gaza in the Middle East. And they were found to have sent at least $12.4 million to Hamas. And the 2 leaders of this group got 65 years in federal prison. The other 3 members of the Holy Land 5 got like 15 and 20 years in federal prison. And these are the people that Zohran Mamdani is praising, the kind of people he's hanging out with. And by the way, these were all naturalized U.S. citizens or legal U.S. residents. These are the kinds of people we're letting into America. They hate America and they hate Western civilization. Zohran Mamdani is big fans of these people.
So let's explain what the Holy Land Fives are. They are convicted criminals that have been convicted in 2008 for material support for Hamas. In 2001, the Holy Land Foundation was actually dismantled. In 2001, it was shut down. And in 2008, they were convicted. These 5 people were convicted for supporting Hamas. He is saying that he is in love with those people and asking you to look them up. So I say, absolutely look them up. That guy is so radical. He might be some sort of a Trojan horse, not just for Marxism, which is what he's actually saying, but for jihadism.
And again, he says in his rap song of 2017, this is 1 year before he became a U.S. citizen, that he loves the Holy Land 5, and that America deserved 9/11, deserved the 9/11 attack. How is it possible that we allowed this guy to become a U.S. citizen when he's putting out songs like this? And now this guy is the mayor of New York City, the city that was the victim of the 9/11 attack. This guy's the mayor of New York City, and he praises the 9/11 attack. And his wife, Rama Duwaji, I don't know how to pronounce her name, she has liked multiple posts praising the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel, which was the worst slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. And her parents, his wife's parents, are Muslim immigrants from Syria. Why are we letting these people into our country? They hate the country. They hate America. We're letting them in. And we're letting them run our cities. Mamdani and his wife hosted a dinner for a pro-Hamas terrorist sympathizer named Mahmoud Khalil, who defended Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. And of course, an October 7th attack killed about 1,200 Israeli civilians and Americans. And this woman openly praises the October 7th attack on Israel. During this attack, Hamas took several hundred hostages, tortured and killed most of them, gang raped most of the female hostages before killing them. I think only 3 females made it out alive. But Mamdani's wife liked tweets praising this. So we have this radical left Islamist mayor of America's biggest and most important city, the target of the 9/11 attack, who praises the 9/11 attack and hosts a dinner for a pro-terror activist at his house, a green card holder who the Trump Department of Homeland Security is trying to deport back to Syria. Apparently, he made fraudulent statements on his visa application, according to the Trump administration. Why are we giving people like this visas? And why should we care about who the mayor of New York City is unless we actually live in New York City? We don't have to live there. And a lot of people are moving out. A lot of people are fleeing New York City right now because of this guy. Well, the reason we should be concerned is that Zohran Mamdani represents where the Democrat Party is today. Mamdani's candidacy was endorsed by leaders of the Democrat Party, including the governor of New York State, Kathy Hochul, the Democrat leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, and Barack Hussein Obama. And here was AOC's bonkers speech, an absolutely insane speech, endorsing Mamdani.
Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together.
And what she likes to do is list off every ethnic group in her speeches, except, of course, for white people. She thinks that by doing this will trigger non-whites to vote for the communist. Make no mistake, today's Democrat Party is not liberal. It's radical left. It's communist. 66% of Democrats now view socialism more favorably than capitalism. That's according to this Gallup poll. And here's Mamdani explaining that he is a communist.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of ceasing the means of production.
He says socialist, but that's what communists say. He says that his goal is for the government to, quote, seize the means of production. That's what he says here. And that's communism. It's Stalinism. It's actually worse than communism. It's some weird variant of Islamo-communism fused with LGBTQ transgender hatred of Christianity and of Western civilization. And some call this ideology intersectionality. Here's a graph that shows how that works. Intersectionality is a coalition of interests that hate Christianity and hate Western civilization. They want to bring down Western civilization. These interest groups can often have their own separate goals that can conflict with each other, such as radical Islam and LGBTQ. But they share one goal: destroy America and destroy Western civilization. That's why we see Palestinian flags being flown alongside LGBTQ flags at these protests. Now, if an LGBTQ or a trans person actually entered Gaza or entered Iran or Afghanistan under the Taliban, they would be thrown off a building, or they'd be hung from a crane or thrown off a cliff. And this is great right here, this Muslim woman yelling at this LGBTQer. She's telling him, "You disgust us. We want nothing to do with you." So this is a very fragile coalition indeed. If the Muslims ever do gain a majority here in America, the LGBTQers and the wokesters will be the first to go. But until then, the left and the radical Islamists will be uncomfortable allies of convenience to bring down Christian-based civilization. Now, just to give you even more idea of just how radical Mamdani is, during his campaign for mayor, he spent an entire day giving Hassan Piker a tour of New York City. Now, Hassan Piker is radical left. He's the left's biggest political streamer. He has millions of followers. Just like Mamdani, Piker said that America deserved the 9/11 attack.
America deserved 9/11, dude. Fuck it. I'm saying it.
He also incited his audience to kill Republican U.S. senators.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott.
And he calls on millions of his viewers to kill Republicans in general.
Yeah, kill them. Those motherfuckers. Murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude. I'm sick and tired of it. Left-wingers, liberals, you need to be fucking showing your opponent's guts on there, okay? You need to be getting them. You need to be shanking these motherfuckers and letting their intestines just ride on stage. What the is this shit, man? him up, him and fucking dice him. What the is this?
Piker is an immigrant from Turkey who openly hates America and is openly pro-terrorist. And I don't know why the Trump Justice Department has not arrested him for inciting assassination, inciting violence against Republicans, and inciting terrorism against Americans. Why hasn't the Trump Justice Department arrested this guy? And I have a full deep dive video on Hassan Piker here. And Zohran Mamdani spent 3 hours on Hassan Piker's podcast rallying Piker's insane followers to support Zohran's campaign for mayor. Now, the media told us over and over again that Zohran's mayoral campaign, Mamdani's mayoral campaign, was an organic uprising of the people against capitalism, against Wall Street, and against corporatism, and against the system, against the political establishment. We were told that Mamdani's campaign was just a spontaneous, organic uprising of the people. But Mamdani's campaign was not organic or spontaneous at all. It was organized and funded by billionaires George and Alex Soros and their network of nonprofits, which funded Mamdani's campaign to the tune of $40 million from the Soros network to fuel Mamdani's campaign. And I have another deep dive video here on how George and Alex Soros and their network of nonprofits have literally been funding terrorism across both the Middle East and even on American soil, according to this well-sourced report by the Capital Research Foundation.
Ryan has done his work and has really come up with some smoking guns, especially on George Soros. Donald Trump can use as RICO charges, and Ryan is here to lay this all out. What did you find, Ryan?
Well, we had some amazing findings. According to George Soros' own files from his Open Society Foundations, we traced over $80 million going from the Open Society Foundations to at least 54 groups engaged in crime and domestic terrorism on U.S. soil, or that are pro-terrorism, endorsing things like the October 7th attacks, or are associated with foreign terrorist organizations or explicitly pro-terror groups. And this is according to his own files, so it's rock solid. And over all of that amount, over 23 million went to at least 7 groups that are doing things that meet the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, including rioting and things like that.
Can you be specific, more specific than this?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. So the Center for Third World Organizing, for example, is an organization that has a hub that fused together several really extreme organizations. We found $400,000 going to them, and they openly boast of the fact that they threw down during the uprisings in Minnesota, obviously referring to the rioting, and boasting of how many thousands of people they helped train. A lot of these groups have created what they'll call like a protest guide or an activism toolkit, and it sounds innocuous. Then you open it up and you'll see support for Hamas in it, but then they'll sometimes slyly say, for more information, go to these hyperlinks. And you go to the hyperlinks and there'll be guides recommending things like property destruction, violence, false IDs, how to obstruct justice, all of these things, and they know darn well what they're doing. They don't put that there by accident. Some of the more careful ones will just direct their readership to anarchist websites with all that material, knowing that they'll see it when it's there. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really stunning. And some of these groups are coalitions. So when I say 54 groups, just one of those might have 300 entities in that one. So it's actually, the real number is actually much higher.
The Mamdani candidacy was a product of the Soros network and of the Soros plan to destroy America. Now, Zohran Mamdani's father is Mahmoud Mamdani, and he's a professor at Columbia University in New York City, where he specializes in African history, politics, and the evils of Western colonialism, and the politics of what he calls knowledge production. In one of his books titled Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, he writes favorably of suicide bombers. He says that suicide bombers should be recognized, quote, as a category of soldier, and that it should be understood as a feature of modern political violence rather than stigmatized as a mark of barbarism, end quote. Professor Mamdani also called America the root of all evil in the world and compared Abraham Lincoln to Adolf Hitler. He says that Hitler was inspired by the American model.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. The US invented the model.
Now, the actual history is that the vast majority of deaths among Native Americans occurred because of the diseases that the Europeans brought over, starting in 1492, such as smallpox, measles, typhus, because the immune systems of the native population had not encountered these diseases before. This is very sad and unfortunate. It's an unforeseeable tragedy, but it had nothing to do with genocide or inspiring Adolf Hitler's Holocaust. Professor Mamdani invents a fictitious history to back up his hatred of America and of Western civilization. So he thinks that Abraham Lincoln was like Hitler. That's how warped his thinking is. And this is where Zohran Mamdani got his ideas. And Mamdani's mom is a radical left Hollywood movie writer and director. She grew up in India at the top of the social and economic hierarchy, India's caste system, and her family was very wealthy. She graduated from Harvard as a film major and also got a degree in sociology. And here are some films of hers: Mississippi Masala starring Denzel Washington, Vanity Fair starring Reese Witherspoon. She won the award for Best Feature Film at the Cannes Film Festival for the movie Salaam Bombay. And she mocks the idea that her son, Zohran, is any kind of an American. In a 2013 interview with the Hindustan Times, she said, quote, "We are not Farangs at all," end quote. We are not Farangs at all. And the word Farangs is a slur term aimed at Westerners, sort of like using the N-word for black people. She continued, quote, "He's very much like us. He's not an American at all," end quote. So she describes Zohran as not an American at all. She hates America. She views America with disgust. So Zohran's mom and dad hate America, even though they're very wealthy and have done very well in the American system. So this is where Mamdani is coming from. It's where he gets his views from. His father is Islamic. His parents are radical left Marxists. And Mamdani won the mayorship of New York City by winning the overwhelming majority of votes of immigrants who were not born in America. His voters were born somewhere else, many in the Middle East. He actually lost among New York City voters who were born in America. He won 62% of the foreign-born vote and only got 38% of the vote among those who were born in America. Mamdani was also propelled to victory by winning 84% of the female vote under the age of 30, who had reactions like this.
Sharia law starts now. Absolutely. Zohran Mamdani, Islamic Caliphate, our brother in Islam, Islamic Caliphate of New York starts today, baby.
These idiots have no idea what Islamic Sharia law even is. In Iran and Afghanistan, if a woman is even accused of committing adultery, she can be stoned to death. No proof is needed. Just an accusation is usually enough to earn a stoning to death if you're a woman living under Sharia law in Afghanistan, Iran, and other places. If a woman goes out in public without the proper head covering, if she shows her hair, they're arrested or imprisoned. Under the Taliban in Afghanistan, females are not permitted to be educated beyond the primary school level and can't go outside in public without being escorted by a male guardian, such as her father or husband. And marriages are arranged and forced in Sharia law countries. Here's what Iran's late Ayatollah Khamenei said about women before Donald Trump removed him from the earth. And I'll just translate it here. He said, quote, "Women are animals created by Allah to be used by men. Women are no different from cows, sheep, horses, or mules. Allah created women with a human appearance so that they would not frighten men," end quote. That's the view of women in countries that are governed by Sharia law.
Sharia law starts now. Absolutely. Zohran Mamdani, Islamic Caliphate, our brother in Islam, Islamic Caliphate of New York, starts today, baby.
These dopey white females have no clue what's in store for them if Sharia law were ever to go into effect in America. If that were ever to actually happen, there would certainly be no more abortions, no gay marriage, no LGBTQ parades. Gays and trans people would be rounded up, imprisoned, tortured, and thrown off buildings, hung from cranes, thrown off cliffs. That's what happens in Iran and Afghanistan and Gaza. And these dopey females would not be drunk in bars like this. Instead, they'd have to dress like this. But this is who decides elections today. And here we have a Mamdani intern explaining that Mamdani's election is part of Islam's jihadist holy war to destroy the West. Her name is Hadika Arzu Malik.
And the true believer knows that none of this is in vain, that this is all jihad, that this is all ibadah, and that this is all counted for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm gonna do what I gotta do, because it's about time to do that. And I know everybody has their own families and has an education and everything. It's just a question. We don't want to get doxxed, and we don't want to get suspended, and we don't want to get arrested. How gangsta are you? That's just my question. How much are you willing to do it? And I know everyone has their own risk levels, but at the end of the day, that's a question to ask ourselves. How committed am I to this? To what extent of my personal material gains am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger noble cause? And subhanAllah, I truly believe that when your heart is in the right place, if you get suspended, if you get doxxed, because it's bound to happen when you're doing a righteous cause and when you're doing something for the sake of Allah here in the West, it will never ever be in vain. And the true believer does not fear that, because the true believer knows that the akhirah is a promise.
So she says, this is all jihad. This is all counted by Allah. How committed am I to this? What am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger, noble cause? How gangster are you, she asks. So she knew what the Mamdani campaign was all about. She knows what this political project is all about. Here we have pro-Hamas demonstrators attacking an innocent driver in New York City.
You dumb bitch! Fuck you! Fuck you!
You scared now?
You fucking dumb bitch!
Stupid!
Fuck you!
Stupid!
Fuck you!
Stupid! Yeah, triangle Hamas! I
You
love
fucking
Hamas!
dumb bitch!
He spat on her car and yelled, quote, "You effing dumb bitch, I love Hamas, open your window," end quote. Mamdani's victory in the New York City mayor's race, his capture of America's biggest city, was a key front in the Islamist jihad holy war to bring down the West and to take down America. The men have many wives, and their job is to have as many babies as possible. So it seems that America's conquest by Islamic jihad is inevitable by birth rates alone. So that's what's happening.